Was a very personal problem that I was spending too much time just thinking what I'm going to watch tonight and scrolling. And then I realized like, hey, there are recommendations, but recommendations are not useful enough. My thinking has always been like any problem that you need to fix, you need to feel connected with that problem. Last time I was watching TV, I used to go behind the TV and see like who is coming, how is the pictures being played there. Someone coming from the media doesn't understand this is a different piece of technology. We just don't want to improve the recommendations. We want to go to the next stage of recommendations.
Today on the podcast, we have Rahul Patil, who's the CEO and founder of Tellygence. Rahul actually exited a company much earlier on in his career, which he started whilst at university. He scaled it significantly, had a massive exit, and then decided to go into the corporate world to understand that industry too. Here he did very well, but he decided it wasn't the right for him and he got the itch to go and start his own company again. He's done multiple different things, including a hardware company, before finding Tellygence, which is like the Spotify for TV. And the idea is that TV is changing and the way we're consuming content is changing, and Tellygence is looking to be at the forefront of that. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'm Amma from the Bay HQ, and this podcast is powered by HSBC Innovation Banking. So great to have you here today and talk about the exciting things you're doing. But if we rewind, when you were a kid growing up, what were your ambitions? What did you want to be?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast today. When I was growing up, entrepreneurship as such wasn't the thing, but building business was always on my mind. So when I was studying my engineering, that was building the business was always the plan. I wasn't sure like what business I'm going to build, but that was one thing that was always on my mind.
What made that on your mind? What attracted you to it?
Probably my upbringing. So I grew up, my father was a managing director of a factory, and I think he played a major role in terms of my entrepreneurial thinking. So I grew up seeing how the sugar is made, manufactured, and I used to get massively fascinated by, imagine, right, as a kid, you're going in a sugar factory and seeing, and you're allowed to eat as much sugar as you like, right? So that was massively fascinating in terms of like the whole machinery, the whole machines, how things are made. So somehow back of my mind, that was always like imprinted, like I'm going to be an engineer. So that thing essentially shaped massively in terms of my future journey as well. Interestingly, it has always happened with me at twice or thrice. Learned first practically, and then I studied the theory. So I studied practical first and then learned the theory part. Same with engineering as well. Most of the engineering I first studied when I was either working on shop floor, understanding how the actual manufacturing is done, and then went into engineering and then studied the theory part. Similarly with startup as well, like when I first built the business and then went and studied how the science behind it.
So what was that first business you built? What was the idea there?
So I was thinking 2 or 3 different things in terms of starting my first business. So first company I built was an ERP system. And again, when I was building, I had no idea it is called an ERP, like imagine a young engineer.
What is an ERP for the people who don't know?
Okay. So ERP is like enterprise resource planning. So into a manufacturing business. So like your resources are like your inventory, your people, capital, everything falls under resources. So that needs to be planned. So one of the thing that kind of like initiated that whole journey was the problems I saw. So I was working on shop floor, and every now and then I used to see like one department is not talking to other department, or there are blockages on the production line because the inventory did not arrive on a specific day, or the shop floor manager did not do enough planning in advance, that whatever stuff they needed. And I thought like why it wasn't done in this particular way, or finance had no idea in terms of the real-time balance sheet, like what is my profit and loss. And those are like small problems I was seeing, and I thought let me go and kind of like solve those problems. I knew the domain, but did not know how to begin. So that's how it all started.
How did that business do? How did that first company go?
That went pretty well. So that was like mid-sized company. I grew up that business, ran for around four years. That got acquired. I had a good exit, but very early stage. But in terms of the product and innovation, it was pretty phenomenal. Like very early days, what we managed to achieve. So we had a team of around 50 people, and we have gone through the full product and sales life cycle. I was a solo founder that time. I was the CTO, CEO myself. So that was pretty interesting, phenomenal journey.
Obviously, at that point, you were so young and you were growing a company to that kind of scale, had an exit. How were you feeling on that journey? Was it exciting or was it just overwhelming? How did you feel about it?
Like mixed emotions. Pretty exciting, but huge learnings. As a young entrepreneur, you're like 200%, 300% fully onto it, so was pretty successful in terms of like commercially successful business. So it feels very satisfying when I look back saying, hey, I built up from scratch, I grew the company, built the product, sold the company. It feels nice.
When it came time to sell it, how was that? Because obviously it was your baby, right? You built it yourself.
Yeah.
You'd grown it so quickly. And then when you let go of it, did it feel good? Was it like, now it's the next stage, or was it, what do I do next?
Well, again, if I look back, the exit wasn't planned in a way that one day someone gonna acquire my company, and even now as well, when I build the business, I always think acquisitions do happen, but you cannot build a business with the mindset of one day you're gonna sell that company. You need to be open if acquisition happens, but you cannot build something, otherwise you cannot pour your kind of like your love, emotion, sweat, tears, everything into it, so similarly it just happened more like organically that I was we were doing pretty good as business-wise, but where we reached to the tier where we were operating, and I was trying to like break through that tier, come into slightly in the bigger boys club, and we tried few things, but somehow it wasn't happening. And although we were making good amount of money, like after 4 years, that's the question back of my mind was like, is this something? Next 10-15 years I wanted to continue doing exactly same thing, or I want to do it slightly different, bigger, better, and I wasn't able to find the answer. So just money making wasn't the idea when I started building the business. So it happened organically. It got exited. One of the competitor, they sort of had an eye on us, and they gave us a good offer, and I thought, okay, it's a good time to exit.
But what happened next then? So you've just exited a company so young. What do you do next?
It's a good question. So I was totally blank in the sense what I'm going to do next. No idea. So good amount of money, but then what's the next plan in terms of what next company I wanted to build? I had no clue that point in time. But one thing was clear, that I want to build another company soon, but I don't know which problem I'm going to fix it. So I thought I had two options: either just to take a break, just go around, and this was happening in India. So one option was just travel around and see, and the other option then back of my mind was I did not have job experience by that time. I did everything as my own business, but sometimes like something which you haven't done, it always, you feel excited about it. So if you're doing business, you feel excited about it. If you build up your startup, I said, look, it's like big companies, and how do they do business? So then I look for a job, and I got into like a proper corporate job. But it was interesting as well, because finding a job was challenging, not because I was not qualified. Most of the time I was overqualified. And they said, well, we can give you the salary, but with 4 years experience, do not expect us to be putting you at a CEO position for a large multi-million-dollar company. And that's that. So I took some time in terms of finding which is the right company for me and so on. But it was an interesting journey. So immediately after my first exit, I got into a job. So that as well helped me now when I look back, that I can bring the best of both worlds. And I have bigger thinking in terms of like large enterprises. At the same time, I started my journey as a founder. So I bring that mindset as well into the business.
So you went to get a job because you thought it would be exciting. How was the experience? Was it fun when you were at your job?
It was fun. However, as an employee, my mindset and thinking was way different than a typical employee would have been. And reason for that, because I came from my own business. So when I entered into the job, I always used to think like, okay, what's the business model? How's company making business? Okay, all those business sort of things that helped me. Sometimes it was useful to have that thinking behind. At the same time, I mean, otherwise sometimes it's also a struggle, because you struggle in a way that you have larger vision, and it feels like you're trapped, because you are somewhere like in middle management, and then whom you gonna talk like, like your immediate bosses, and they say, well, what you're thinking is way bigger than even my paycheck, so we cannot influence the whole company. So it's interesting, but sometimes it's as well, you feel a bit kind of like trapped.
So it took a little bit of time to come up with the next idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And while you were at your job, were you constantly thinking of like different ideas and testing things out, or
yes,
how did that next idea come about?
So next idea, again, I mean, that was back of my mind, like I wanted to start the next business soon. But my thinking has always been like, any problem that you need to fix, you need to feel connected with that problem. I mean, there are like millions of problems on the planet that you can go and fix it. But unless you feel massively motivated, it has to be personal. In the first startup, it was personal for me because I grew up in that industry. I saw that firsthand, like, how what were the problems there. So I always kept like my eyes and ears open in terms of. So now as well, even if I walk on the street, I just see problems everywhere, and that feels kind of like exciting for me. So when I was working into consulting business, that point in time, like there were a few things happening, and that laid kind of like a road towards Tellygence. That one was like smart TVs were coming into the market, and I got massively excited when I heard like smart TV. I thought like, wow, it must be really smart. And literally I bought like new smart TV at home, and I started exploring, and I quickly realized that it's not really smart. So I was like playing as if like, a kid would play with the toy. So I started exploring a lot, and not just as a device, but as TV on its own always fascinated me, even as a child. Always, it used to feel like kind of like very interesting device where something is happening. Even as a kid, when first time I was watching TV, I used to go behind the TV and see like who is coming, how is the pictures being played there. So that's how kind of like it started. So there are multiple things happening at the same time. So that's how it shaped the next startup when I was working for my second startup. That one was, I was seeing like, okay, this is the device wise, it looks good, but it's not really smart enough. I was facing a lot of time in terms of searching content, and that as well was frustrating. Remote control was hugely frustrating. Even though there was voice search, I felt like why we are mimicking like manual function that you do on the web again there. Another interesting event happened was when I was watching TV, I quickly realized like, okay, in mobile, that device knows you, but this television device doesn't know you, right? So if you think in this way, you're sitting in the living room, does that device know you? No. So there was a lot of things happening, and that was shaping kind of like the idea for. So I was looking into like very quickly, I quickly realized what the problem here is, right? One bigger problem I identified was the smart TV has become like a giant tablet. And I felt like, what's the value add if we try to convert every single device into a computer or a mobile? Computer has its own place. Obviously, it adds value to our day-to-day functioning, same as your mobile. But if we because they are great and useful, if we start thinking I need to convert every single device just like them, then what's the value? Why we are doing it? And that's where I was like struggling to see like why we are trying to convert smart TV into just a giant tablet. And again, the interface is pretty awful. You have that remote control, which We all know the thing, how painful it is. So that's how I started the second startup, which was in the hardware space. So problem that time we're trying to solve. So there were two problems. One was obviously content discovery, that you're not finding the content enough what you want to watch. And the other element was there were a lot of apps being built for smart TVs, even today as well. But except the video streaming applications, none of the apps are being used. So, why do you use smart TV apps? Either you watch like YouTube, Netflix, or anything that has to do with content. But people are building apps. I've seen like Twitter and Facebook apps as well on smart TV, and I was thinking like, who's going to use it there, right? But if you think in this way, developers are spending their efforts. So someone is spending time and money on building that application, right? And no one is using it. Why? So one of the reason was like, again, we're trying to mimic like mobile on smart TV, and that is not working out. So the apps are very similar to mobile apps, which has very poor user interface, which is like your remote, and you can't do anything with that. So as a result, consumers have just stopped using that. We only use video streaming app. Apart from that, that device is not being used. I took it to the stage where I quickly started realizing how big that problem gonna be, and to fix that problem, you need to build an ecosystem around. And as a startup, it's very, very hard to fix the problem at the same time build an ecosystem around you and think of every single thing. Then I realized, okay, the problem is real, needs to be fixed, but maybe the timing is not right, or probably I'm not the right person to fix all single problem in the whole ecosystem. And then I sort of like parked that product for time being, and then I thought, okay, let me work on that in the background and can bring that back hardware project again when the time is right. So that's how the one digital happened.
That was now a few years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so is that you're still something which you're working on in the background, or is it now?
No, it sort of like I parked that at a specific time where, I even reached to the place where we were close to start manufacturing. So I reached out even to Broadcom in terms of like, these are design, can you help us manufacturing? And they say, yeah, we can do that for you. We can put our assembly line. You give us the design. We'll put your sticker on it. You can ship it. I started talking to the supply chain, the different entities within that whole supply chain. But the challenges were, as a small startup, if you think like you need to manufacture, you need to distribute, you need to sell, it's like tons of problem in that whole thing. So for the moment, it's parked. So it did not kind of like progress to the stage where it would be fully commercialized. However, the IP is still with me, and at some point that I will bring that into Tellygence at future time. But that's still a futuristic in terms of what is required to be done into the whole ecosystem.
So was Tellygence the next thing, or was there a gap in between starting Tellygence?
Yeah. So Tellygence, again, the problem was there in terms of, again, was a very personal problem that I was spending too much time just thinking what I'm going to watch tonight and just scrolling. And then I realized like, hey, there are recommendations, but recommendations are not useful enough. Secondly, even though there are recommendations, still I'm spending at least 25, 30 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes just scrolling through because it's too much to choose from. That problem was initially my personal problem. Then because I was hugely annoyed, then I started asking other friends around, like, do you face the same problem? They say, yeah, we also face the same problem. Then I asked the next question, like, what are you doing about it to fix that problem? They say, well, we cannot do anything. We're just waiting someone gonna fix it. I was also in the same ship where I thought, this is not my field. Someone else needs to fix this problem, and I'm gonna be the beneficiary of that problem solution. But wasn't happening. And then in the background, I was doing a lot of research in terms of how big the problem is, who else is trying to fix this problem, and essentially why the problem is not being fixed. It's very interesting kind of like information that came out of that whole research. That one thing is, look, there are no lack of resources with any single organization across the world. So it's not a question like, do we have enough talent or not, or if if there is enough information and knowledge around or no, there are many smart people there, but it is the lack of direction. That's the reason it is not getting sold. And why the direction is not what you want to give is because, again, it goes back to more that commercial question that when one use case or one business becomes popular, everyone tries and see, can I replicate that use case? And most of the time it doesn't work that way. So a classic use case is, if I give the Apple's example, so obviously we know the iPhone is very popular. It kind of like the company Apple has become, what Steve Jobs did with iPhone. Every single company in the television space thought like, okay, can we replicate the iPhone story into television field? Even Apple tried themselves. So they thought like, okay, can we replicate the same story somewhere else and can we rewrite that story? But it's very, very hard. And we know now, if you look back, it's very amazing, beautiful product, but it's not capturing the people's imagination as iPhone has, right? So that is kind of like challenging thing where unless you give a new direction where you are, you're not able to go to the next stage. So that's where the whole Tellygence thinking came in, that we just don't want to improve the recommendations. We want to go to the next stage of recommendations.
We hope you're enjoying the episode so far. We just want to give a quick shout out to our headline partners, HSBC Innovation Banking. One of the biggest challenges for so many startups is finding the right bank to support them. Because you might start off and try to use a traditional bank, but they don't understand what you're doing. You're just talking to an AI assistant, or you're talking to somebody who doesn't really understand what it is you're even trying to do. HSBC have got the team they've built out over years to make sure they understand what you're doing. They've got the deep sector expertise, and they can help connect you with the right people to make your dreams come true. So if you want to learn more, check out hsbcinnovationbanking.com. Like you said there before that, you're thinking that it's somebody else's problem to solve. Mm-hmm. So obviously you're now running Tellygence and it's going very well. What skills did you bring to the table? How have you been able to build what you've been able to build? And could you give people an update on what you've done so far? Like, what's the biggest wins?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing in all these startups was always I focused first on the problem side. Solution, automatically, it follows through. And even with Tellygence as well, when I started, I fully focused on the problem. Even didn't worry like what technology I'm going to use, what product it's going to come out of it. No idea. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, let's go and fix this problem and then work backwards from that problem. So that's how it all started. So initial design, everything, I did it myself. I mean, I come from technical background, and so I did a lot of initial coding and the framework. Previous hardware experience, so we were doing a lot of things with Raspberry Pi as well. So I got a kit. I started playing around with that. Another skill set which I have from my last two startups, where I'm good at assembling like amazing team around me. So that happened just naturally. So now as well with Tellygence, we have some of the best kind of like rock stars, into the media space where you can think of. So obviously so every single member of a team, it's a small team, but very domain focused team. So we know what we're trying in terms of the whole streaming experience. So in terms of what we've achieved so far, we built a product, we launched a product, we made plenty of commercial deals. So we have so many kind of like content partners around the world. So we are now into kind of like acquiring new consumers every single day. People are downloading our app. So from like someone, I mean, who's not from the industry, who came into industry, we made our space, and we are now so kind of like expanding. So in terms of the next stages where Tellygence is heading towards is we are in the space, what we call it as a fast, like free ads streaming television. We are creating a space for ourselves.
And let's say people listening right now thinking about downloading the app. Mm-hmm. What's the experience like? What do they get if they download the app?
So it's a free streaming app. So there's no cost, there's no subscription for using the application. So it's a direct to consumer streaming application. You open the app. and literally start watching. So that's the idea behind, instead of asking people or spending too much time in thinking, we're saying you open the app, you want to watch comedy, you press the button, I want to watch comedy, and we will serve you comedy. So we have a lot of content, around 100 plus channels right now, including like drama, entertainment, action, sports, movies, you name it, we have it. So yeah, it's interesting, kind of like early wins.
How do you get content onto the platform? Because obviously you're a new platform. You've got to convince people to give you their content. How do those conversations go about? How are you able to convince people about your vision?
This is like a marketplace problem, and this problem is as a content streaming business we have it, but every other similar kind of like marketplace, we call it marketplace problem, where you have two sides of the equation. So in our case, like content providers, they are like our vendors, and other side you have your consumers. So unless you have consumers, you will not have like content providers, and unless you have content, you will not have your consumers, right? So we were required. So we ran huge campaigns around the world. It wasn't easy for us. Like we just entered in the market and someone said, "Hey, take this for you," you know. So we heard a lot of no's in the early days. But then worked again and again and again. So as in that whole process, we managed to like create or reach out to the most of the players across the world. So that was happening. Secondly, a lot of big players also, they are watching us, in the sense like, okay, this is a small company. They reached out to us a few months ago. Now they are, even though we said no, they're still kind of like going on their way. So early days, so a lot of new vendors are coming up who initially either said no or they didn't say no. Interestingly, in our business, people don't say no, but they don't say yes either. So that is a no. So the typical kind of like sugar-coated no would be, looks interesting, we'll come back to you later, you know, or they will not answer you. And when they kind of like, they see the traction, they come back, hey, we missed, and then let's circle back, kind of thing. But it was just a relentless sort of like sales campaign. Reaching out to people, different producers, explain them what you're trying to do, and just go through different questions, saying, what's your plan? How are you going to build? The good thing for Tellygence was we are the space where we are in. It's a free ad supported streaming. It's slightly newer field. So just to give you the context as the whole ecosystem, there are like two sectors when it comes to television. One is your on-demand, where your traditional Netflix, Amazons, and like all the applications are there. And you have your traditional broadcasters and as well cable TV providers, cable service providers. So this fast proposition sits right in the middle. So technology-wise, we are an OTT application, but we stream linear content. So this sector is overtaking the traditional cable and linear television. So we are anyway, what we are doing, it's very new, like technology-wise. The ecosystem is just getting developed. So we are one of the kind of like early adopters in this new proposition. And because of our domain expertise, we already built the state-of-the-art infrastructure. What everyone were thinking in the industry, we already went ahead and implemented, not because anyone was asking us, just as a natural thing. For example, GDPR, how do you kind of inform people that what information about them you're going to use it or not? And we just implemented day one as a good practice, saying we need to inform people first about the information and so on, and if they're not comfortable, we will not use that information, and we tell them again and again and again. So a lot of best practices we already implemented, and now other companies in the industry, they are looking at us and they're saying, okay, can we use that similar approach? So that helped us. So when people look at Tellygence, it looked different, not just from the user experience standpoint, but someone coming from the media does understand this is a different piece of technology.
So obviously when you started Tellygence, you'd already started two companies, had a corporate career as well. So you'd learned so much before you even started this.
Yes.
But what do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned so far from Tellygence itself, that when you started it, you didn't think it would be as hard as it was?
See, a few things, at least I knew that, and that is again, because you're doing for the third time, it's not like it gets easier. What it does essentially is you're prepared for that pain. So pain doesn't go less or more. It just, you have to be prepared for it, right? So it's like, if I give another example, if you're giving, let's say, birth to a child, right? So does it mean there's a less pain every second, every delivery per second? What it changes essentially is you're prepared for it, right? So you know that, okay, this is the pain you have to go through, and you don't get panic. That only changes. So that way I was prepared that this is going to be a marathon. So I should be prepared for that. And I kind of like put some foundation stones accordingly. The good part, what I did, one of the good practices, what I've done early on is I got a good set of like advisors from the industry, who even today as well, some of them, they are industry subject matter experts, some of them are my mentors, and they help us as well. I'm surrounded by some of the best entrepreneurs around the world, and I learn from them every single day. And I do the same as well. Like if someone is starting new, I help them because I as well learned at some point from someone, right? So in terms of like learnings, some of the learnings is like launch your product as soon as possible. Don't worry too much whether it is ugly, bad, you want to make it too polished, because there is no end to that. So as soon as possible you think it is ready, just go into the market and launch it.
We're going to get to quick fire questions in a second. But before we do that, what are you most excited about now for Telligence's future?
Timing of it. So obviously we're solving one of the pain point for end consumer. But what excites me is this amazing timing what we're trying to do, because think of this, right? Until now, if Tellygence would have been, let's say, even 2 or 3 years before what it is today, it would have been way harder for us. Right now, we're going through sort of inflation. We haven't even touched the kind of like, the inflation. We're going in that direction. Cost of living is going high, not only in the UK, but the most of the Western part of the world. And our proposition is a free streaming proposition, right? So it exactly fits into this sort of like the timeline where people don't want to pay because of the cost of living. They don't have money to pay their mortgages and rents and so on. So the audience who were not ready first to watch ad-supported content are saying, okay, you know what, I want to cancel my paid subscription. If you are giving me a decent entertainment experience, I'm happy to see some ads. So timing is amazing. And I always seen that, like, no matter how beautiful product you build, if it is not launched at the right time, chances of it becoming like successful are pretty slim. So timing is, and that like is exciting part of it. And what we have achieved so far. So we've done pretty quickly in terms of like who our end consumer is going to be, how the application gonna be used, what's the future vision. That all the initial sort of like the risk elements we have already uncovered.
Perfect. So quick fire question time now. So first one is, who are 3 British Asian entrepreneurs you think are doing incredible work and you'd love to shout them out?
It's going to be difficult to pick 3 names. I'm going to pick 3. Pahini. So Pahini was as well with me at Stanford. So she's working on another breakthrough problem in the cancer research. So she's doing pretty great. Another entrepreneur is Anish. Anish as well was with me at Stanford. Anish is working on into a crypto space. So he's building a new protocol, and he's doing amazing work. So definitely big shout out to Anish. Third entrepreneur is Hina Hussain. So Hina is, she's a very young entrepreneur, and I'm pretty impressed with the work she's doing into the space. So, but she's very like young and doing pretty good in her space.
So all great people there. So if people want to find out more about you, more about Tellygence, Where should they go to?
Tellygence.tv. So people can go on this website and download our application there.
Perfect. And is there anything that you need help with right now that the audience could reach out to you and help you with?
Right now, we are looking at two areas, acquiring more consumers. It's a free application, so if people can download the application and use it and tell us that their feedback, that will be useful. Secondly, we're also raising our second round, seed round. So we're looking for capital. So any help raising a capital would be useful, and we are SEIS Advanced Assurance compliant company, so it will be a great help.
Thanks so much for coming on today. Have you got any final words to the audience?
Thank you. It was a really exciting talk.
Thank you for watching.
Enjoy
Don't forget
our
to
conversation.
subscribe. See you next time.
Thank you.